Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Ratsanasan, and today our readings are Job 23 and 24, Exodus 1 and 2. And so we are going to focus on Exodus 1 and 2, specifically the birth of Moses. Now when we look at Exodus 2, where Moses was born, he was hid for 3 months, put in a basket in the Nile, and then he was saved by the Pharaoh's daughter. This is a rather short documentation of what has happened, but it's probably one of the very first Bible stories you have learned in the Bible, especially if you went to Sunday school. And so there's so much to meditate on. And as I was reading it, I was finding myself asking so many questions about the faith and actions of the people involved. And you know, Moses, he was one of the most utilized people in the history of this world. He had small beginnings, and in the eyes of the world, he had a very slim to little chance to even surviving past the age of infancy. And so as I read it as a mom, my heart began to stir. And I started to think about what would it be like to be in the shoes of Moses' mom and dad? What would it be like to be pregnant knowing that if I had a son, the midwives would have to kill him? What would it be like if I had the baby and I tried to hide the baby? At what point could he reveal himself since there would be no other boys his age? You know, day after day, I feel like I would play out these scenarios trying to desperately find a way to save Moses. And as I thought about it, this story, it is not based on heartache. It's not based on worry. It's a story about faith. And so here is what we know. We know that in Exodus 1, the midwives were told to kill any boys that would be born. And yet we see what the midwives did. In verse 17, it says the midwives feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. And so they acted in faith. They did not fear men. They feared God. And so how did God respond? In verse 20 and 21, it says, so God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. The fear of man, it didn't consume them. It was their fear of God. And so they acted in faith, and they spared the baby boys, and the Lord was kind to them. And so then we move on to chapter 2, and we see Moses' parents. His mom gave birth to him. They saw that Moses was a fine child, and even in Acts 7:20 it says that Moses was no ordinary child, and so they hid him. And then for 3 months, and then they put him into a basket and put him into the Nile. And it was her decision that would require her to follow a plan that had no answers. Yet she sent the baby away from her protection and into the care of her God. You know, that kind of courage only comes in the life of someone who has developed a genuine trust in God. Her confidence in the Lord was evident through her actions. And you know, you think about it, if she had tightened the grip on Moses and continued to try to hide him, she wouldn't have experienced what happened next. Her trusting obedience, it was rewarded with nothing short of a miracle when Pharaoh's daughter drew Moses from the water. And not only did she declare that she would adopt him, but she found Moses' own sister, who then went to fetch a Hebrew woman who was Moses' mom to care for him until he was done nursing. All of those events, they lined up perfectly the way God had planned them. It was so incredible. And so we know that this was pleasing to the Lord, and that it was an act of faith, because in Hebrews 11, we see that Moses' parents, they are among the heroes of the faith. Hebrews 11:23 says, by faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a beautiful child, and they were not afraid of the king's command. Again, it's not a story about worry. It's not a story about fear. It's about a story of faith. And although we know so little about Moses' mom and dad, we find great significance in their actions towards their son. Not only did they care, protect, and provide for him, but they were an instrument of God's purposes. And as they lived out their life in what seemed like a desperate situation, they acted out of faith in God, not fear, and trusted God's working and leading. And so whatever it is, we have to remember that God, He is always on the throne. He is always behind the scenes working things out for our ultimate good. And so when we have done all that we can do and we just trust God calmly, even though to us there seems to be no way out, we trust God. And so just as Moses' parents knew what true faith is, this is what we have to remember. Faith is knowing who God is, knowing His promises in the Word, and clinging to what we know about Him and not what we see. Faith is not just aimlessly hoping. It's knowing who God is, knowing His promises, and clinging to what we know and not see. And so just a couple verses to back that up. Romans 10:17 is so faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. 2 Corinthians 5:7 is for we walk by faith and not sight. And so I just want to leave you with this. Being a believer and putting your trust in God, it doesn't always remove us from the situation, but when we are anchored in Christ, those trials will bring praise and glory to Jesus. And so focus on this today. 1 Peter 1:7. These trials will show that your faith is genuine. It is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold, though your faith is more precious than gold. So when your faith remains strong through the trials, it will bring much praise and glory and honor on the day when Jesus Christ is revealed to the whole world. And so I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope that you meditate on this today. Have a great day.